Good morning, gardening friends. Today is Sunday, May 21st. It's going to rain a little later today. Right now it's overcast. Of course, it's early in the morning. I'm having my cup of coffee in the front yard. A lot went on this week. This week was the week of mulching. I hadn't mulched in a long time, probably about 3 or 4 years. I typically don't mulch my flower beds because if things are going to reseed, you kind of don't want mulch there to stop that from happening. And then I put the leaf litter down. So I basically make my own compost in place. It doesn't have a lot of minerals in it though, so you do have to add fertilizers, which of course I've shown you that I do. Here you can see the Australian tree fern is loving this rainy weather. We've been getting rain every afternoon, typically about 1 o'clock. The wandering dude is looking fantastic. So far the grass hasn't come up where I reseeded it in front of my potager, but I remain hopeful. It was seeded last week, and with all this rain it ought to be coming up. Not a lot of new things going on here, but you can see my tomatoes are growing. I need to stake them up to my, not stake them, but tie them up to my fence. I did transplant this one daisy here. It was in a spot that I reworked this week. When you have an established garden like mine, you're not always going to see dramatic differences, because I'm kind of happy the way things look. It's only when something dies out or is not looking that good that you kind of change it out and do something different. Here you can see the tomatoes on this. They're the little small tomatoes. Okra is still doing well. It looks like in the front here, I've got 3 buds on my opuntia cactus. And the snapdragons are still doing well. I was going to put string beans there, but I don't have the heart to get rid of the snapdragons, so I'll try to stick string beans somewhere else. I'm going to make a special trip out to the street because this is the time for the crinum lilies to be blooming. These are milk and wine. Crinums are not something you see much anymore. Wish you could smell these. They have a very strong, sweet fragrance. The Victorians had lots of different types of crinum lilies. They were very popular, but they kind of fell out of favor. Probably because they're a little difficult to grow. I bought these at the botanical gardens about 20 years ago, and they don't like to be replanted. They have a huge bulb like an amaryllis. And in any event, it took about 5 years of waiting before the first blossom occurred. And then after that, they multiplied. Of course, this is, 15, 20 years ago now. And I don't touch it because they don't like to be messed with. And if you want them to bloom, otherwise they'll have beautiful strap-like foliage. No progress at the street. I still have my hole, which keeps the cars out of the neighborhood, so I don't have to worry about street noises. Not that I worry about it, I don't have to deal with street noises. I'm going to be weeding in this area this week because I don't know what this grass is, but it has taken over. I just call it corn grass. It's always been here. I have found the antidote to corn grass, and that is to plant this stuff, the crocosmia, because I think that's what that is. It's also a hardy gladiola, is kind of the common name for it. Has the same type of foliage, and it gets so thick that even that corn grass can't grow there. So I may plant more of that around here. I'm going to be opening up where that I have a hydrangea back in there. I may move it. I may move it out a little bit more, but I'm going to just leave it. It hasn't blossomed very well. Now that the oak tree is gone, I'm going to leave it this year and see what it does. Palm is sending up a bloom stalk. It's the prettiest bloom stalk that one's ever sent out. Over here, oh, a weed. Well, I'll get the rest of it later. I do have one of my zucchinis is coming up, and there's another one sprouting there. I did plant 3 hills of it, and I stuck some more seeds in. That's going to be my little zucchini patch. And I don't know if they're going to make, but I've got some figs on my little fig tree that I planted this year. Back here, since I moved this bench, it opened up a little bit of space back in there, so I planted some borage. Borage is one of the few herbs, tastes like cucumber, but the leaves are fuzzy. You really kind of only want to eat the flowers. It does taste quite good, but what I was going to say is it's really the only herb that does well in the shade. You can count on it to come up. Of course, it is an annual, so you do have to either let it reseed or plant it up every year. Here you can see the flax lilies are coming back, and the caladiums that I had are blooming nicely. I reworked this bed this week. The caladiums were there and the irises were there. I bought these perennial salvias, and I had told you all that I planned on putting some of this purple wandering dude around there, and I actually kind of like that color combination between the white and the blue and the purple. It actually is quite striking when the sun shines on it. Oh, and of course the elephant in the room, 15 bags of mulch I used on my walkways. I don't think I finished that thought when I started it. I don't mulch my beds, but I do mulch my walkways. And I use cypress. Cedar can be used as well. The reason why I choose either one of those two is they have insect repellent natures to them. I have in past years had flea problems here, and fleas are repelled by both of those. And I noticed just by putting this mulch down, prior to this it was kind of a muddy walkway because I hadn't mulched in about 4 or 5 years, and mosquitoes were running rampant through here, and they're still around, but they're not as bad now that the mulch has gone down. So if you have problems with fleas, consider using either cypress or cedar mulch. Here's where I transplanted my Mexican petunias from my potager. I made room in that potager for other things. Of course, the gardenias are still blooming. These are a small gardenia, Cape Jasmine. I think I told you years ago I used them like the border grass. I had a border of these mini carnations in the front, mini gardenias in the front yard. Oh, someone had made a comment about border grass. This is monkey grass. I found a patch of it on my property when I bought the property, and I knew what it was, so I planted it up. If you read up on it, it is invasive, but an invasive plant is only invasive if you let it get that way. If you plant in grass, like in my backyard, mowing one side of the border grass automatically takes care of it spreading in that direction, and you only have to deal with it spreading into the beds, this is how it does it. And what you do is you pull it up. Don't put that in your compost pile. It will sprout. I'll get that out of there later. But Kevin, who comes to help me on Thursdays, used a machete, and I used a shovel, and we edged the inside of this prior to putting the mulch down. And it took about maybe 30 minutes to get a crisp edge, because of course we don't mow in here. You could weed whack it to keep it at bay. So that's the only warning you have to deal with the monkey grass. The other thing is it is really a liriope. It only gets leaves once a year. So if you're weed whacking and accidentally slice your monkey grass off, it's going to look sliced off for the rest of the year until next spring. So it's just something to be aware of. Be careful around your monkey grass. It does look nice as a border. Woo! One of the kitties left a present. Good. Nature at work. That crocosmia I transplanted, you can't kill it, but it looks kind of nasty right now. The bulbs will spring back. Everything looks very lush with all of the rains we've been getting. Let's see, I got a birds in bloom and my coffee. I think I'll take my coffee into the backyard. That balloon flower I had from last year, this one had a small one that came up. I might have stepped on it accidentally, but I got another one from Lowe's. On sale, of course. Chrysanthemums are blooming nicely. Here you can see the ivy starting to overwhelm the coleus. But the good news, if you take a really good look at the coleus, is no slug problems. So I may rethink using coleus again because it is pretty. And here's my little dinky rose of Sharon. But look how pretty those double flowers are. They only last one day. No fragrance. I like things that look like carnations. And it is growing. I was thinking of digging it out and putting a palm here, but I'm going to let that grow. This was one of my few camellias that did not bloom last year, and it is a pink carnation-like thing. Sorry about the jog there, but a mosquito landed on my hand, and I didn't want to get bit. Let me close this door. You can see the peach angel's trumpet is starting to get above the slugs and snails. The newer leaves aren't as holy as the older leaves. That's just something that happens when you plant stuff in aspidistra. Hellebores are still coming out. I can't get over that. They seem to really like this spot. Two of them do at least. And here is a potato vine. It looks like this, and will grow 30 feet and have potatoes that hang off the vine. They are somewhat invasive. If the potatoes fall, they will root and grow back next year. Some of them are edible, some of them are not. I don't know what kind I've got, so I don't take the chance. I had these planted here 3 years ago. This one came up and was growing along the ground, so I went ahead and staked it. And I was going to dig one up because I have one other potato vine on my property. And when I put the stake in here, I saw that that potato vine had gone over on my neighbor's side and apparently was under something, because you can see it's got no leaves. However, I'm going to let it, those leaves will make, and it will leaf out nicely. You can't kill that stuff. That potato has been in the ground there for at least 3 or 4 years. So again, can be invasive if you let it, but if you keep it controlled, it's a nice looking vine. What happened, why I stopped growing it a lot, I used to have it on my front fence, is I got an infestation of, I call them lily beetles. They tend to only settle on lilies and eat the heck out of the leaves. Well, they have a even finer taste for potato vines. And this potato vine, they will eat the entire leaves off the potato vine. So it looks beautiful now, but you have to spray it to keep it that way when those lily beetles start eating it. So needless to say, I got rid of my potato vines rather than spraying. If I'm not an organic gardener, but if I can avoid sprays, I do. There you can see the other Lenten rose. I need to thin back this wandering dude here. My iochroma that I bought this year is blooming. That will get about 6 feet tall eventually. The news here is my hydrangeas. I still have the aspidistras, and they are a pretty flower considering they're a weed basically here in zone 8B. But the hydrangeas, Nico Blue, that's the only color I have back here. The only kind I have are doing really well. Continue to get bigger. My coxcombs, so far they're not cat friendly. I think I told you that. If the cats get in there and break them, they really only have the one stalk. But I do like that red color. That's really kind of the only accent color that I use. My heliotrope is doing fabulously well. That has been in that pot. Same dirt. I do fertilize it for, I think, 3 or 4 years. I had it here where my little topiary bay is for the last 2 years, and it has done miserably there. It gets very spindly and just doesn't look good. But I like the smell of the flowers, so I keep it there. Well, because of the bay tree, I put it there. 4 feet away, 3 feet away, and it's doing fantastic there. I guess it's a little bit more in the shade. So, lesson learned, I'm going to leave it there. Here you can see my trough is doing well. I need to thin some of this yellow stuff off of my other plants there. I'll stick it in pots because it easily roots. Again, the aspidistras, I don't know how many weeks this is, but they're still looking beautiful. And that's a seed pod, which I probably better pick off before it has seeds. You can see the toad lilies. I need to start hacking a spot for them so that they do well. Oh, Miss Mimi is waiting at the door. She can't wait to get outside. Oscar was here earlier, and because of him, she couldn't come out. Let's say, let me put my coffee here. This may look like an ordinary trash can, which is what it is. However, I keep all my cushions for my yard in that. I was going to get one of the fancy boxes at Lowe's till I found out they were $100. Well, that was 4 or 5 years ago. Versus a nice black lidded trash can was about 10. Of course, it's no longer 10. I did notice I've got a little flower bud coming on that angel's trumpet. I need to start fertilizing. I've got some new sprouts coming on the golden chalice vine. Here I've moved some mint. I had this particular mint is peppermint, and I brought that back with me from a garden I had up in New York. It's not done really well considering that's about 5 or 6 years old. However, it hasn't died. So I brought it to a sunnier spot. This mint I bought this year, and it's doing so well. That's why I brought the other mint to put with it, so maybe it will flourish. Oh, we also passed by. You may recall up here were chrysanthemums. Well, they had a sale at Lowe's of plants, which were, what, 2 for $10, and I got the agapanthus And I got the blue salvias for the front yard. Agapanthus do extremely well in pots. That probably won't bloom this year. The problem with agapanthus is they like to be root bound in order to bloom. And if you watch Gardener's World, Monty Dunn's advice is if you grow them and you have them in a clay pot, of course this is aluminum, you don't transplant them until they break the clay pot because the roots are that strong. Otherwise, if they have plenty of room for their roots, they're not going to bloom. So in any event, I put them in the cast iron, and I'm hoping to get a few years of flowers out of them. Here's some more mulch I put down. This mulch I mulched for Mimi because that's her spot. She likes to sit in the roses. I had to laugh. She had a fight with Oscar last year. She's an old cat. She's, I think, going on 18 this year. And Oscar, we believe, is much younger. In any event, he likes to pick on her. And she was napping in amongst the rose bushes, and he came there to pick on her. And she got on one side of the rose bush, and he got on the other, and she'd reach around and smack him with her paw. And he would tear right straight, jumping straight at her, and just tear himself up in the rose bush. And then when he was done, she would reach around the rose bush again and smack him again, and he'd start all over again. After I tried to break it up after a minute or so, and that's all there was Oscar's blonde fur all over that flower bed. And he was upset because he never even touched Mimi. She was behind the rose bush the whole time. Here are the 3 new toad lilies that I bought. Got them online from Walmart. They all sprouted. They're only about 2 weeks in there. Plumeria is leafing out. Oh, there's Miss Mimi doing her rounds. We had some sad news this week, and that was that the birds absolutely tore up my beans. God has a sense of humor because I'm not crazy about okra, and they didn't touch the okra, but they got my string beans. So I replanted a few more in there. If you plant them in the ground, they like to eat the bean sprouts. They must be vegetarian. They like bean sprouts. Here you can see the Sarracenia. Still doing nicely. Caladiums are coming out. Really, everything's coming out. Let me get a sip of coffee here. I reworked this thing. Oh, that's good. And as you can see, I decided this year to get away for free. Basically what I did is, those were the same pots that I had the cyclamen in, and I just grubbed out the cyclamen bulbs, which I'm going to dry and save and just see if they come back next year, and put a little top dressing on the pots and poked 3 holes with a pencil or stick and stuck in some cuttings of the wandering dude and fluffed up the, I guess you call this coir or core, the mat. And I like the instant color that it gives, and that should droop over that with time. And of course then I'll have plenty more of the spiderwort that I will keep moving around in the backyard. Here you can see how, I don't know if you can see the crack in the deck. There is a banana trying to work its way out of that crack, so I'm going to have to get under there and hack that banana down. I don't know, there's no way to kill a banana. You can dump boiling water on it. You can spray insecticide on it, not insecticide, herbicide on it, but nothing seems to kill it. So you just have to cut it. Here's where I planted some more borage. You can see the little yellowish green. That's the reason I planted them out. They were getting chlorotic. They need the dirt and the goodies in the dirt to get green again. They'll get about 3 foot tall, and I have had them here before, so I know they'll come back. I mean, I know they'll grow. They won't come back because they're annuals. Again, some more mulching. I wasn't going to mulch back here because I don't like to draw attention to my hose station. However, I got to thinking, well, fool, you use that hose station the most out of everything in the backyard. It ought to be comfortable to get to it instead of having to fight back overgrowth. So I cleaned it a neat path to it so it's easier to get at. Here's more mulching at work, and this was where really you notice the difference in bugs, because this is the lowest part of my backyard on a northern exposure, very what's the right word, hardly ever gets sun, so it's always in shade. And while I was cleaning this area out, I cleaned up the nandinas, cut them back slightly, not enough so that you'd notice, but while I was doing that, swarms of mosquitoes were all over me. I had to put mosquito spray on me, which, by the way, which is neither here nor there, I rubbed my face and got mosquito spray on my lips, and my lips started going numb. So watch out if you spray yourself with mosquito repellent. I did go ahead and rinse my mouth out good. I love this pink container, and so I thought that would look good with some purple, and I kind of like the look of it, especially with that colorful bowl. I remember my mom got that bowl for Christmas. She got my grandmother, my father's mother, Mary, a crystal dish, which I have in my dining room for Christmas. And she got this, and I remember Mom opening her present and looking surprised. And then on the trip back home, she said, I can't believe she bought me that piece of junk. So Mom was never real pleased with that gift. So it reminds me of that little story every time I see it. Hi, Mimi. She's wondering what's going on. What's going on? I haven't sprayed for weeds yet here. I did see the tortoise came this week. I see him twice a year. I usually see him now, which is when the strawberries are fruiting in the yard, the wild strawberries. And then he'll come again later in the fall when the loquats are ripe. I don't know how he gets back here because my fence is barricaded against animal infiltration, but somehow he gets back here with his shell. Strawberries, human strawberries, are doing well. And this Ozark plum is doing well. It's really leafing out. I might have some plums next year. Back in here, I need to do a little weeding. That spot was where I put had the mint in a pot. And you can probably see I planted a chrysanthemum. I saved one of them that was in the urns. This is kind of my little potting area back here. One of my neighbors was getting rid of that stand. She had it in her bathroom. So I anchored it to the wall, and I use that for my pots and things. It's convenient for storage. And here's the last of the mulch that went out. I went through 30 bags of mulch last week. And again, it makes this spot a nice place to sit now. The jasmine is in bloom. I can handle that little amount of bloom. And the chrysanthemums are still, this one's almost done, but still has some new. And that one hasn't started yet. So we'll have some more time with that. Blueberries are leafing out. And my elephant foot palm, or ponytail palm, is doing well. You really have, it's very hard to kill one of those. I've had them out they do like somewhat, a little bit of a shade in zone 8B. I have had them in the front yard, and it liked the northern exposure on the deck. The only problem with them is they look nice when they're like a fountain. All those leaves are, just sort of gently bend over. However, when I had it on the deck, we had some bad winds and it knocked it off the deck, and it didn't hurt the pot or the plant much. However, it did bend the foliage, which drove me crazy. So I figured you want to put it in a spot where it can just do its own thing. I will have to bring that in the winter. And there's Miss Mimi in her spot. How are you doing today, Miss Mimi? You ready for your close-up? She's saying, what's going on? Well, that's about it for today. A lot has gone on. Things are growing hand over fist. And this will be a week of just kind of getting some of the other weeds out. I'll get rid of those sprouts that are coming up on the crepe myrtle. The nice thing about having an established garden is you kind of attack it the same way you attack house cleaning, or at least the way I attack house cleaning, which is you get the stuff that bugs you the most first. And then you get the middle stuff that you notice, but it doesn't bother you that much. And the little stuff that really doesn't ever bother you, you don't even have to bother getting that. Just let it stay. So my advice to keep you from working yourself to death in the garden, get the stuff that shows. Have a good day. Ooh, the sun's coming out.